Gordon, first of all, but thanks so much for your time because it sounds like you've been a pretty busy man lately.
Yeah, the whole team's been pretty busy. This has been a parallel activity, so we're in full swing with building prototypes of T50 and in vehicle development at the moment. But this has been a second team, if you like, for 18 months.
Wow. So that actually brings us on to quite nicely that this car is a car which has been built in parallel, right, to T50. It's not
Yeah,
really strictly based on a T50, as it were.
yeah, absolutely. It couldn't be more different from what I did with the F1, which of course was the other way around. With the F1, I never had any intention of doing a variant or another version of the car. It was just going to be the F1 road car. That was it. But of course, I had my arm twisted to go motor racing, so we turned up with a GTR, which was a very small variant of the road car actually, and then we did the LM to commemorate the win at Le Mans, and that was basically a variant of the GTR going back on the road. So everything we did was a variant. The only car, I suppose, in the F1 family that was a bit of a parallel design was the long-tailed GTR for the final season in '97, when Porsche made their slight cheat, shall we say, long-tailed car at the
Yeah.
end of '96. So we did the same thing, and we built a handful of road cars, long-tail road cars, and then did the long-tail GT, and that GTR was actually quite a different motor car from the F1. But
Right.
otherwise, there were variants. And here's where we have the crossover with T50, actually.
Yes.
I wanted the road car to be the ultimate driving experience, and I didn't want my head cluttered with racing ideas because I thought I'd compromise the design. With this, however, I've taken a 180-degree approach. I've gone right from the beginning. We announced we'd do 100 road cars and 25 racing cars.
Uh-huh.
I didn't want the road car to be diluted, and I didn't want the track car to be diluted. So,
Sure.
as I say, we've had a parallel program and another team of people working on it. So, this one has been absolutely focused on giving the best track experience for an owner, as the road car has been focused on giving the best road car driving experience.
With that in mind, then, effectively, what this has allowed you to do is not have to adhere to any set of rules. What has that allowed for? I mean, compared with the road car version, what sort of crazy abilities have you had not having to adhere to
Yes.
anyone's sort of book?
Yes. You're absolutely right, James. This has been a blast. It really has, because we're not building to regs. We thought when we started this 18 months ago, the ACO at Le Mans and the FIA were muttering about doing some sort of GT category for Le Mans,
Mm,
and we thought fantastic, So we'll design it to those regs. But
right.
actually, quite soon after that, around the end of last year, beginning of last year, sorry, they they went off on a tangent, and they've got this hypercar class which is based on some LMP2 chassis, and it's over 1,000 kilos, and
Right.
it just doesn't interest us at all, to be honest. So you're absolutely right. I mean, we've had so much fun because we haven't had to build it to any regulation. So it's how broad is your imagination?
Yes,
We've
yeah.
been on the aero, for example. We actually got up to nearly 2 tons of downforce, but we
Are
did
you
back
serious?
back down from that.
Wow. Do you dial it back down because of the ability you would have to have as a driver in order to enjoy that, or just because you would have to build everything else so extreme to
A
match it?
couple of things, actually. Yeah, you're right, and on both counts. A couple of things. The first thing was we want this to be accessible performance for a good amateur, let's say a good amateur driver, and of course a racing driver would take it to 10 tenths, but I
Mm,
wanted it to be sort of a car you could have fun with at 9 tenths.
sure.
And still feel like you're pretty close to the limit and you're having fun. So 2 tons of downforce was a bit too much for that, so we dialed it back to 1,500. That's at maximum speed, of course.
Sure.
But the other reason was it's aero related. So when you get up to a ton of downforce or more, you're really looking at slicks to
Hmm.
support that load. And Michelin have a really good range of slicks, but I didn't want to make the car a caricature. The car is wider than the road car because we've had to flare out the wheel arch. We have to restyle the body and flare out the wheel arches to fit the rims in. I think we've got 10-inch at the front and 12-inch rims at the rear now. So it's a bit wider.
Yes.
But if we'd taken tyres off the shelf, so to speak, to support 1,900 kilos, we would have had to make the car a lot wider. And that would compromise the motor car, but also compromise the suspension geometry. So
yes, of course.
it was, you're absolutely right, it was tyre related. So we had to go for a standard Michelin slick that would support the downforce we'd chosen, but still packaged within the architecture of the car.
How important is it to you that, I mean, obviously 25 cars isn't a great deal of cars, so there's only a small proportion of people who will ever get access to these. But that's not to say that there's not plenty of people out there who remarkably could still afford one. How important is it to you, the kind of person that actually buys this car? Do you want to see these cars being used as opposed to them being parked up?
Yeah, very important. Once again, the same sentiment and ethos as we have behind the road car. So we've done everything we can to make the road car enjoyable, driver-centric, enjoyable to drive. And the same thing with this. I mean, this is the experience this is going to give you on a track. I've already driven the thing in my head about 10 times. It's going to be phenomenal, and it's sort of people that have bought them so far, because we've pre-sold a lot of the cars. Sort of people that have bought them are going to use them.
Excellent. How do you see this being used? Is this something that someone could, I mean, the word track day seems to do this thing a bit of a disservice almost. Like how do you think it will be used? Will they be like an organized event where, owners will get together, or will they support, I don't know, an F1 race or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a mixture. At the sort of lower end of the scale, if you like, I think people will just go and enjoy it. It's a very simple car to run. You don't need factory supporting you. You don't need special technicians supporting you. All the training comes with included in the price of the car, as does all the equipment to run. Tools, fueling equipment, jacks, all comes with it. So I think at the lower end of the scale, you're going to get people literally just going to, like I do, go and have a track day and have some fun with a bunch of other people or friends or whatever. However, in addition to that, we're going to organise our own events for owners. And in addition to that, we've been working for a year now with Stefan Rattel, who runs most of the world's GT championships. And he's got a great plan he's starting what he's calling a GT1 club, where owners of these sort of track day cars, if they join, and he's doing all the organisation through the manufacturers, and he's asked us to be part of it. You get to go to his championships, and you get to go to some of the prestigious circuits with your family and your friends on the Sunday and watch the race. And then he keeps the track open on the Monday, so you can actually race, and maybe even the Tuesday. So you can actually have a whole day on the track you've just watched people racing on, and one of your favourite circuits.
What an awesome idea! And so that will be
he is also looking at stage 2. If he gets enough people interested in joining the GT1 club, GT1 Sports Club, I think he's calling it. He's then looking at starting a race series, a pro-am race series like BPR from the 90s, where these guys can race.
I tell you what, I know the way that the world's going right now is obviously turbocharged hybrid and ultimately long-term EV. I think the opportunity to just merely go and spectate something like that, right now would be phenomenal. Yeah, wouldn't it just?
Funny you should say that. What I said to Stefan is, I think you'll have people, I honestly think, because it's petrol heads going to watch the GT racing, I think you'll have people staying over for the Monday just to hear these things going around the track.
Yeah, I might book that just to go and see the Monday show. Fantastic. That's awesome. Okay, so you can't see T50 and then see T50S without the topic of aero. There is a significant augmentation here of aero. And also, really, I'd like to know from your point of view, do you mind it being compared to the T50? Because I guess it is quite fundamentally such a different car.
Sure, okay, yeah. The thing they have in common is how much the fan helps us. So as you know from the road car, the reason why we've managed to keep the car so clean, no front splitter, for example, no obvious aero stuff on it, is we've got a pretty reasonable amount of downforce, not enormous amount, pretty reasonable amount, and most of it comes from the fact the diffuser works very efficiently underneath. So that was central to keeping the car clean. And funny enough, that's happened again with this, because if you look at a lot of the track cars, they've had to modify the body. It's not just the aero bits on the front and the back. You've got huge holes and scoops going through the body,
Yes.
where they're trying to control and manage the air to get downforce or reduce drag or whatever. So once again, the fans helped us. This fan's been optimized, and the diffuser's been optimized just for high downforce, because we don't have any of the road car modes. So although it is full of aero bits, it's actually still the sort of shape of 50 shines through a bit still. We haven't had to damage the body, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So comparing it with 50 from that point of view, I quite like that.
Yes.
The aero bits themselves, we've got a massive diffuser on the front, and the central bit of that, can't really see it that well, but the central bit of that is actually an airfoil section, which guides the air under the nose. The 3 ducts in the front are for the lacquer ducts in the front clamshell are for brake cooling and driver cooling. The barge boards behind the front wheel are actually to tidy the air up to feed the side ducts, which is oil cooling.
Okay.
On the road car, the oil cooling is in the center of the spine, and we've moved it now to the side of the car for the racing car, and the barge boards help clean that up. What you can't see is in front of the rear wheel, in front of the front wheel, the bigger pardon, there's some really big diffusers which are adjustable to adjust the aero balance.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, on the rear, we've got the Delta wing with an adjustable slotted flap, so we can adjust the aero balance. Each car will be set up for individual owners.
So will you sort of profile the sort of tracks which they like to drive on, or closest track is, etc.?
Absolutely, including the silencing. So unlike the road car, which has got a conventional silencer behind the transmission, this has got two inline silencers, which are of the absorption type. And we can tune those or supply silencing depending on what track you're running on. For the lucky ones with no limits, of course, it's straight through. And for the other folks that drive on tracks with limits, so and we can change. I mean, they're a very quick item to swap in and out. And likewise on the setup, if their local tracks are quite bumpy, we can set the car up for that. And if they travel around the world and want to drive on different circuits, we can generate setup notes for most circuits around the world.
Fabulous. Just quickly on the front of the car, with this being a track-only car, what was the reason for maintaining the headlights?
Because it depends what Stefan's going to do. We did in the BPR series in the 1990s. We did endurance racing. They were 4-hour races,
right?
And quite often they would go into the afternoon and the evening. Plus the fact, I think this is going to be so quick. You're going to want to get people out of the way, so we've still left on the steering wheel.
That's a great answer. I like that one. We just stick with that one.
Yeah, we still left the horn flash and the horn and the headlamp flash on the steering wheel.
Brilliant. Right, so now we're facing the rear. There is quite a dramatic change. I mean, I thought the rear diffuser on T50 was substantial. This is borderline obnoxious, Gordon.
It's a bit outrageous, isn't
what
it?
a profile, yeah. So talk to me about how, because when we met last year, I came away scratching my head really about how this aero works in conjunction with the fan. How have you improved on that?
Well, that's quite easy because we had to cope with lots of different aero modes, 4 main modes, let's say, on the road car. So the shape of the diffuser had to work in streamline, under braking, high downforce and auto mode. So we sort of, compromise is not the right word, but we had to adjust the shape of the diffuser and the size of the diffuser so that it would work efficiently in those modes. So you're always juggling performance against the diffuser shape and the fan performance. With this car, there's only one mode, which is high downforce. So we've been able to redo the diffuser shape and size
Okay.
and optimize it just for one fan speed.
I see. Fantastic. And so there's no active aero then as such on this car?
No, just a fan.
Okay. Just a fan. Okay, brilliant. Just a small observation, really. A lot of higher downforce cars, I noticed that they will use as a sort of swan neck wing strategy. What was your reason for keeping it mounted under?
Yeah, on a road or track car, that's a bit of an affectation, I have to say, because
Right.
what that does is you do less damage to the wing efficiency if you mount it from the top, because you're disturbing the slow speed air on the top and the high pressure region far less than you would the high speed and low pressure region if you mount it underneath. So if you're building a car like a Formula One car, if you're building a car that's looking for the absolute nth degree of lift over drag, that's a really good idea. If you're building a track car where you could have over 2 tons of downforce if you wanted it, but we don't need it, it's a little bit of an affectation, because it's much heavier to reach over the top of the wing and mount the wing. And in my opinion, it's uglier as well. So we just didn't need it. I mean, we could have had, I think we could have probably reached 2.2, 2.3 tons if we really tried hard.
Are you serious?
Wow. Yeah, so we weren't looking
savage.
for the last bit of low weight.
Yes.
And rigidity of the mounting was much more important to us.
So let's talk about this engine. I know that overall the whole car is obviously remarkable, but considering the day and age we're in, that you've gone and developed a naturally aspirated V12, what does this rev to?
The revs are exactly the same, and the reason for that is the limitation on the road car is the valve gear. And even though we've got all the valves, inlet and exhaust titanium on the 50S engine, there's still Cosworth reckon that's the sort of limit for a 4-litre, really. It's the 12,000 revs. However, the pickup speed gets there a bit quicker than the road car, if you can believe that, because the road car is already very, very fast response time.
I assume the gearing as well on this will be a different setup.
Yeah, much lower, because this will only have a top speed of about 210.
Okay, yes.
And in addition to that, like the silencing and the setup, we're offering, I mean, I want each car to be really individual. So we're actually offering different ratios. So somebody's got a circuit with not very long straights, for example, that they use the car on. We've got a lower set of ratios we can offer as well.
Fantastic. Where were the major savings? Because you never look at a T50 and go, you know what that needs is less weight. You know, I don't know how you found some more. So I'd be fascinated to hear about the main areas of weight saving. Yeah,
well, about a year ago, our weight target was 890, because we did a rough. You get weight saving with a track car from 2 areas. One is the added delete, obviously. You know, you're adding extra body work with the aero bits.
Yes.
But you're deleting things like the sound system and the HVAC and stuff like that. So that's the easy sum to do. You set it against the road car, you do an add and delete. And when we first did that, and some weight saving on top of that, we came out with 890, which was already a pretty aggressive target.
Amazing.
And then about a month ago, when I was writing the tech spec for the press release, I spoke to Ed, who's been my senior engineer on this, and I said to Ed, right, time to put your neck on the block here. You know, do you think we can get down to 890? Because if we can't, we need to put the right weight in the press release. And he said, well, we do a mass track every week. We're currently running at 852.
You're joking.
But I think, and I got a shock, you know. So, and he said, I think we could get down to 840. But I said, no, we'll put 852, 840.
Just to be safe, 852. What I'm trying to think, you can't really compare that to anything, really. I mean, how have you gone? There isn't anything to really even begin to relate that to, right?
Yeah, I don't think I honestly don't think there's anything even close. I mean, it's got a better power to weight ratio than the car that came second at Le Mans last year.
Right, okay. So even though these cars, both T50 and T50S, for you aren't really, its priority isn't about speed or lap times as such. No. The chances are it's going to be pretty swift.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I honestly
Yeah.
don't care what it does around the Nürburgring or any circuit for that matter. But
Uh,
you're absolutely right. It's
yes.
going to be quick. You put a
Yes.
professional racing driver in it, it's going to break a few records, I think.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you've got Dario, haven't you, who's doing the dev work for you?
Yeah, we've got three test drivers, and I
Wow.
do a bit myself still, of course.
Fabulous.
And Dario will be the focus on this one. Obviously, being a racing driver, he can't wait.
I bet he can't. He must be chomping at the bit for it. Just going back to the exhaust system here, what are we expecting this thing to sound like with no rules here? I'm picturing some sort of vintage F1 car, sort of sound.
Well, I tell you, the first time I really got stunned by an exhaust sound was 1972.
Uh-huh.
Was my first trip to Le Mans, where I designed a 3-litre prototype for Alain de Cadenet, the Duckham's Ford it was called, with
Right.
a Formula One engine, and a detuned Cosworth Formula One engine.
Wow.
And the people that won the race there were Matrons. They were 1, 2, 3, I think, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a 3-litre V12.
Right.
Prototypes then were 3 litres in those days. And I remember standing on the Mulsanne Straight. That was the days before they had the chicanes.
Sure. But it was
So it
just
was over
really
3
long.
miles long. And I can remember these things coming past, these V12s, and thinking, I've never heard a sound as good as that before. And I looked it up the other day just for fun, and they
Yes.
revved to 11,000.
Did they really? Wow.
So this
Because
is
those
going to
things sounded
sound.
like they went to 20, didn't they? They were just the most bonkers sound.
Yes, so I mean, this is going to sound spectacular. In addition to that, we've had a bit of fun because we've popped the tailpipes together at the back. They've come
Yeah.
out very close together.
Uh-huh.
And if you take the catalytic converters off, you haven't got the damping of the exhaust pulses in the tailpipe.
Yes.
And when the sound comes out the back, the pulses mix from one pipe to the other, so it sounds like virtually double the revs.
You're joking. Seriously.
Yeah, so it's going to sound good.
When can I come and hear this, Gordon?
Well, we have a mule. We'll have a mule running towards the end of the year, actually, in about 10
Oh,
months'
soon.
time.
Okay, fantastic. So on that note then, how is progress in terms of build? Am I right in assuming that you'll complete T50 first, or will the build of these be running side by side?
No, this is absolutely sequential. So
Okay.
it's off this. It'll be built on the same line as 50. So as the last 50 comes off the line at the end of next year, we'll have a couple of weeks gap just to change some of the fixturing on the line, and then we'll run straight into 25 of these.
Is the chassis of this, the actual tub itself, is it a completely different tub to T?
Yeah, the roof spider is a new molding completely because
Wow, okay.
it's got the ram induction box, and we've moved the oil cooling, so we've had to retool the roof spider.
Wow. So it really is fundamentally, it is a different car, I think. So
It is.
just
I mean,
the fact that it's called a T50s is almost a disservice because it is a fundamental different platform.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's every body panel's different. There's not one that's carryover. The gearbox is completely new, and the engine is a very different version from the road car. No variable valve timing, 15-to-1 compression ratio, different heads, cams.
15 to 1.
Yeah, no, I couldn't believe that either.
Crikey. Mate, you must be I mean, I know it's your baby, but sometimes you must sit back and go, have they got that right? I just want to pick up the phone and make sure they've sent me the wrong info here.
It was like that with the road car when they told me that the engine response was 28,000 revs a second. I still don't believe that, actually.
So, what is the significance of Nikki Lauda on spine there?
For a long time, the working title was 50S because we were generating drawings, of course, and we had to differentiate it from the road car. And I said to the guys, just put a suffix of S on the back for the moment as a working title, and we'll think of a cool name,
Yes.
as we come along. And then, of course, we lost Nikki.
Yeah.
And it was a real inspiration moment. It was, well, hold on a minute. This is a racing car with a fan on the back again. Nikki's infamous win, the one and only win of the fan car at Anderstorp in 1978. And Nikki
Fantastic.
was he was more than just somebody that drove for us for a couple of years. He was a really good friend as well.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that would be, a fitting tribute.
Yes.
And I
Fabulous.
didn't have the family's address, so I asked Bernie Eccleston, and he helped me get
Oh
in
wow.
touch with the family. The family thought it was a great idea,
How fabulous.
and that's where the idea came from.
Each chassis will have its own name too, right? It's going to have its own
Yeah,
ID, as it
that
were.
was another sort of brainwave we had, because I want the cars to be it's 25 motor cars and they're hand built,
Yeah.
and I'm sure everybody will come up with a different color scheme or theme
Yes.
that they want on the car. In addition to that, every car will be set up differently and silenced differently, and all the other things we're offering as a bespoke service. But in addition to that, I really wanted, because I've got a long history in racing, I wanted the car to have a little bit of prehistory. So I had this idea that maybe we should name the car after one of my Grand Prix wins, and then I thought it'd be really cool if it was each one was a different circuit. So that car would always be the Monaco car or the Nürburgring car or whatever.
Wow. Yep.
So I then scrabbled around, adding up all the different circuits I'd won on, and happily, it came to 26 or 27, I think. So
Oh, wow.
that's where that idea came from. And the car will come with that story of that race and a chassis plate with that. So I want the car to always be the Monaco
Yes.
car or the Zandvoort car or whatever.
How, I mean, it's difficult enough allocating cars, never mind chassis. How are you, I mean, bearing in mind where the McLaren F1 launched, I mean, its debut was in Monaco, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to get that chassis? I mean, people are going to be going nuts.
Well, you're once again you're on the ball there, because I knew there would be a bun fight if we told people that.
Yes.
So what we did was we strictly allocated the names to the chassis numbers in order, in chronological order of the win. So, for example,
Brilliant.
01
Yes.
was my first Grand Prix win, 74 Kyle Army.
Brilliant.
So the early people that had bought cars, because we pre-sold a lot, even over a year ago, some of them were pre-sold.
Right.
And so they didn't know, because I didn't have the idea then. They didn't know what car they were getting. And it's strictly chronological order.
Probably for the best, hey.
Well,
You'll
otherwise
end up falling out with friends
there'd
otherwise,
be a
I
bun
think.
fight, wouldn't there?
Yeah, it would. It would. So we haven't touched on the interior yet. I'm assuming, oh, there we are. I was just about to say, I'm assuming it's still a central driving position, but would there be room for one more? And
Yeah,
there you have it.
that's an optional, a no cost optional passenger seat. It's the belts and the seat, I think, are 3.8 kilos, and the grab handle is and the bolts are 3.8 kilos. So if you don't mind being 3.8 kilos heavier, you can order it with a second seat. So we've kept the controls as simple as possible. Even some racing drivers are hugely put off by the amount of switches you get on racing car steering wheels when they first go LMP1 racing or whatever. So what we've done is, because we know this is going to be used by ordinary drivers, if you like, we try to keep the controls really clear and simple. So the wheel only has buttons on it that you really need instantly, sort of thing. And then the rest of the switches are on a GTR style carbon panel on the right hand side. And then we've done a screen. We're doing our own screen and system. And once again, so there's no extras. Everything is built into the screen. So there's things like G-force meters, lap times, lap splits, GoPro connections, video connections,
Excellent.
ship-to-shore radio, car-to-car radio. All that's going to be built into the wiring harness and comes with the car as part of the price.
Well, I tell you what, I cannot wait to see the onboards of this thing. I mean, it's just going to be absurd.
I mean, that's absurd. A good shot there, isn't it? I mean,
that's a hell of a shot right there.
Sitting in the middle. And that's why I can quietly and confidently say I don't think anybody's going to beat this. Forget lap times.
No.
There'll be plenty of people that Porsche already are probably, much faster with their Evo thing.
Yes.
But nobody's going to beat us for this experience. So you imagine sitting in the middle with a 12,000 Rev V12 behind you on open pipes.
That's just everything, right? Unbelievable. It's
and 850 kilos. The response, I can just feel the response of the car, at 850 kilos.
What level of torque is the engine?
We've actually got quite a bit more torque than the road car, but it's at a high rev, obviously. We've sacrificed drivability under 4,500 revs by losing the variable valve timing.
Yes.
Which saves over 6 kilos on the engine and lowers the central gravity of the engine.
That much, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's because the only time you're going to be under 4.5 is pottering down the pit lane. And if the engine's a bit lumpy there, we don't care.
Of course, yes. So what will the car idle at?
We think somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 at the moment is our best guess with Cosworth.
Wow. I mean, just hearing that thing sit in the pits is going to be an occasion, isn't it?
Honestly, James, I said to a lot of people, it's going to give me goosebumps when somebody just starts it up for the first time.
Just turns it over.
And then the first time it comes past at 12 grand.
It's going to be absolutely unbelievable. Fantastic. Well, look, I think what we'd love to do is come and see you and see it.
Yeah, we'd love to show you the car in person because, once again, like the road car, in our opinion, it's much. I mean, this is a great model, but when you see the car in reality, I mean, it even took my breath away when just before Christmas I saw the car for the first time. Right. And so we'd love to have you down and have a look at it.
Hopefully we'll get plenty of questions from the audience and we'll cherry pick some out so the next time we can hopefully meet up with Gordon, we can put those to him, and no doubt the car by then will be a bit further down the line. Well, Gordon, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. I know you've got a small amount of time, but I think it will actually be good to hold some stuff back for when we actually see it. So thank you so much and congratulations on it. It looks phenomenal.
It's been a pleasure.
It's great, and I really look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Gordon.